Okay. We got through the English claims in the New World, Cabot. We hit on the imperial stirrings. Is that where we left off? Is this it? All right. Would you mind hitting the lights for me? Thank you. All right, so we talked a little bit about the key factors that were dividing England and Spain at this time and other nations and powers in Europe. Money, religion, and land, okay? Obviously, England wanted to get in on the game, and they are going to attempt to do so at Roanoke Island. There's going to be a connection that relates to this division between England and Spain. Do you have a question? No? All right, cool. We also have a division over religion because it's pretty new. Henry had broken from the Roman Catholic Church, and his daughter Elizabeth is carrying on the Anglican religion. As we talked about last class, she remains married to the people and married to the church, not an individual suitor, so to speak. Though many came calling, she did not want to relinquish power nor give up the strength of the Anglican Church at this time. There is a treaty that is going to be the Treaty of Nonsuch that's going to keep England and Spain out of war, but it is only going to last for, it's going to be temporary because England is still sending out their privateers, guys like Sir Francis Drake, Sir Walter Raleigh, among others, who are going to be hired pirates to ransack Spanish galleons full of silver and gold and other trade goods. And this is going to sort of tip the scales a little bit. Ashley did a really good job with the research on Elizabeth I and talking about the fact that the final straw was the plot to assassinate and overthrow Elizabeth and how it was traced back to Mary Queen of Scots. It didn't immediately happen. She was locked up. This thing dragged out over a period of time, and then she was executed. That's ultimately what pushes Philip II and Spain into declaring war against England. This is a war that's going to be, again, mostly fought at sea, but it's not going to be it's going to be a combination of English might, money, naval power, and luck. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. So here on the top left, we have Henry VIII. Remember, he wants to get a divorce granted. One of his wives, Anne Boleyn, will be executed at the Tower of London. If you ever have the opportunity to visit the Tower of London, do so. Really worth your time. It's very interesting. Crown jewels are there. It's a pretty cool experience. There's a little, did we talk about this last class? There's like a little area in the Tower of London. It's like this little glass blue pillow where Anne Boleyn was executed. Pretty wild. Yeah. What's that? Elizabeth I? Oh, Anne Boleyn. Yeah. I haven't seen that. Check it out. Very tragic. Here in the top center, this just kind of shows you the division. So let me grab this real quick. So if we look at the map, we see the Lutheran movement. We'll talk more about in lesson 3. We'll briefly hit on Martin Luther's break from the Roman Catholic Church. The Anglican movement in England We're going to look at this Calvinist movement in England that splinters from the Anglicans, which will become the Puritan movement. In Scotland and Ulster, Ireland, it'll be the Presbyterian movement. We have the Calvinist movement, French Huguenots here. We've got the Orthodox movement here, and obviously Islam, located in the Middle East and in North Africa. A little bit about Elizabeth's reign. This golden age, as Ashley mentioned before, is going to relate to economic growth. It's going to relate to sort of revival in art and literature, and this is an era of Shakespeare. It's also going to turn the tide for English influence at sea, not only militarily, but in terms of trade. And she wants to be a part of the expansion of colonies, as she's watched Spain and Portugal get very wealthy off of the transatlantic trade. So again, these countries are going to go to war over all of those factors: wealth, land, and religion. And the decisive battle of this particular war between the English Royal Navy and the Spanish Armada is known as the Battle of Gravelines. But it's not just strategy and superior navy and superior weaponry. It's also a great deal of luck. This is not far off the cliff of Dover. Are you familiar with the cliffs of Dover? Okay, so off the cliffs of Dover, if you went into the cliffs of Dover now, it's just like this massive international port, but it's a very treacherous area of southern England that separates, there's an area that separates England and France. Are you familiar with that area? It's known as the English Channel. You ever heard of that before? It's basically, I mean, this is kind of like a crazy sort of story that I just want to kind of add. So my wife and I are crossing the English Channel on a boat. It's like this massive ferry. And I'll have to bring the picture in of her. Her hair, she had long hair, ponytail down her back. Her hair was standing straight up as we crossed the English Channel. So her ponytail straight up in the air. So when storms hit this area, it can be devastating to a ship. So really the English got very lucky in the Battle of Gravelines, because much of the Spanish Armada was sunk by a storm and not by the English Royal Navy. So it was skill, it was luck, it was a number of factors as to why the English Royal Navy defeats the Spanish. This leads to a treaty that is going to create not a lasting peace, but a peace for a period of time, and that is the Treaty of London that's passed in 1604. So, some symbols of the Elizabethan era. Top left, Sir Francis Drake, by far the most famous navigator, explorer, sea dog, and most decorated captain in the English Navy in this era. Top right, one of also politically connected with Elizabeth, also financially well off and influential as an explorer and sea dog, is Sir Walter Raleigh on the top right. On the bottom left, we have William Shakespeare. That's that golden age. He's the face of that golden age of art and literature, the famous playwright. And then on the bottom right, this is one of Drake's man of war. This is just the style of ship that you have seen the English privateers and maybe using during this era. In the center, this is a sketch of Roanoke Island, and chances are you've probably been there. How many of you guys have gone to the Outer Banks? Okay, if you've been to the Outer Banks, you've been to Roanoke Island. How many people have been all the way down to Hatteras? Okay, then you've been to Croatoan, or I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. These are the first attempts at English colonization. So I have added for you guys an extra note here. You might want to jot some of this down. I'm going to talk a little bit about this attempt at colonization at Roanoke Island. So as the war is the war of words, not naval battle yet, as the war of words between England and Spain is sort of heating up because that Treaty of Non-Such is being broken, and Philip II and Elizabeth are sort of locking horns. A guy by the name of Sir Humphrey Gilbert approaches Elizabeth and says, I think we should get a charter to explore and potentially colonize the New World, because your grandfather, Henry VII, gave us this massive land, thanks to John Cabot, we have this massive land claim, and we should go explore it and see if it's something that we could be successful at, have a base of operations, etc. She agrees to it, but there's a reason why you really don't hear a whole lot about Sir Humphrey Gilbert. Has anybody ever heard of him before? No? Yeah? Somebody maybe? The reason you don't really hear about him is because he dies before he can get the charter. So his cousin, Sir Walter Raleigh, who was far closer to Elizabeth than Sir Humphrey Gilbert was, he's going to take the torch and say, all right, what we'll do is we'll get sort of a joint stock company. Joint stock company is kind of like a group of investors. Like if I said to all of you guys, hey guys, I got a great idea. I'm going to open up a food truck where I sell food at discounted prices and very quality for you all during lunch. But it's a grab and go situation. Would you all be interested? Nobody would? What if I told you it's going to be like gourmet sandwiches? Okay. Would anybody invest? Nobody would invest. Some people. So if you guys invested, and I would say, all right, here's what I'll do. I'll sell you shares in my company. You invest, and I'll get it all lined up. You all give me your $10 a share. Jarvis has had a really good summer. Got a lot of work done, saved his money up. He decides he's buying himself 10 shares. All right, he's going crazy. So, problem is though, I pull my food truck up and the county says, sorry, you can't sell food. So sorry guys, you lost all your money. That was how a joint stock company worked. It was a gamble, it was a risk. Sometimes you made money, sometimes you lost money. These joint stock companies legitimately said, here's all of our money, go make us rich. And sometimes they never saw a crew or a ship. The ships they sent were lost at sea. Okay? So it was a risky venture. I think if we did get the opportunity to open up a food truck, we'd probably do pretty well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, did you watch, it was American Horror Story? What was it? They did a full... They did? Oh, guys. That is Conrack. And it's based off the book, The Water is Wide, and it's down in like the islands in Georgia, written by Pat Conroy. That's far later. Okay, it's hundreds of years later. But that's a good memory, great film, even better book. If you want to become a teacher, it's called The Water is Wide, is what that movie's based on. Is that book. Personally, the book was very inspiring. Worth your time. Pat Conroy, hell of an author. Yeah, that's good. But different time. But good reference. What's up? Were you talking? Oh, okay. Did anybody see the American Horror Story? I've heard it was pretty wild. It's good. All right. Okay. So back to the lesson here. Roanoke Island. What happens is Raleigh gets a group of investors together. They are going to send over, ladies and gentlemen, a expedition. They land in the present-day Outer Banks. They explore it. They collect specimens. They make notes. They keep journals, and they bring 2 chiefs back. The chiefs are Wanchese, the chief of the Roanoke, and Manio, the chief of the Croatan. These native people are part of what larger tribe? Powhatan is part of what larger tribe? Algonquin. Very good. These are Carolinian Algonquin. Okay? So they go back to England. They're sort of brought into court, not like court the way you're thinking, but they're brought into a royal court. It's a really impressive sort of, exposure that they're trying to give these native chiefs, like trying to sort of give them the royal treatment. Manio is very compliant. Wanchese not so much. A little leery about what the English plan is here. Manio and Wanchese learn the English language. Wanchese and Manio share the Carolinian Algonquian language, and they will return. But when they return in 1585 for the first attempt at colonizing, I'm going to set the scene for you. 50 men in armor with weapons. Okay? Wanchese deserts them almost immediately to go back to his tribe. Manio and his tribe are going to, Manio is going to kind of be their interpreter. What's the problem here? Put yourself in the shoes of the Algonquin. 50 white men get off boats dressed in armor. What are you thinking? Right. They've come to conquer. And you have to also realize that in the minds of the natives, bless you, in the minds of the natives, the fact that they didn't have wives, the fact that they didn't have children with them, that seemed bizarre. And it seemed like they were here for war, they were not here for peace. And this whole thing blows up over a very petty, silly, bizarre incident. There is a fight over a silver goblet that has been stolen. The English believe that it was the natives. They attack Wanchese's people, and so begins war between the Roanoke and the settlers. If not for, and in this situation, the leader of the expedition heads back to England to try to gain supply to come back. If not for Sir Francis Drake, again, privateer, he knows that they're there, drops anchor, goes ashore, and they're ready to come home. They want to get out of there. So he loads them up, takes them back, and one of the guys, the guy that was responsible for the sketch in the middle there, John White comes back and tells Raleigh, look, the only way that this is going to work is if we take women and children, and the only way that it's going to work is if we go up into the Chesapeake Bay. Exploration of the Chesapeake Bay had already taken place. They know that there is saltwater and freshwater sources if they get into that area of Virginia. And remember, Virginia is very large. We're talking New York to Georgia all the way out to the Pacific. So John White convinces Sir Walter Raleigh to give it another shot. They take women and children. John White, his daughter, is going to have the first European child in the Americas, or first English child in the Americas, Virginia Dare, at Roanoke Island. But the problem is this: they don't land in the Chesapeake. Their Portuguese ship captain lands right back at Roanoke. They get off the boat. They're almost in immediate war with the Roanoke, and a foolish Englishman attacks Manio's tribe. So now they have no allies. White tries to do a similar thing that explorers or settlement leaders did this time. He heads back to England to get supply. Well, why is he hung up in England when he gets back? 1587. Well, why does he have problems? So his plan is to go to England, quickly supply, and head back. What do you think holds him up? No, what keeps him from immediately turning back with supply? Why is he stuck in England? Okay, that's a really good guess, and you're not wrong. Money from investors. Good point. That is a problem. But there is a larger problem that prevents him from coming back quickly. And again, like Emily brought up earlier, how long did this thing take? 4 to sometimes 6 months, right? This is a long journey. The biggest factor, war with Spain. The war with Spain holds him up. So by the time he gets back, as Warren pointed out, they're gone. They're lost. Okay? So when he returns, he finds carved onto a palisade the word Croatan. Okay? Croatan is the name or basically Hatteras nowadays. Right? But he is on another privateer ship. His agenda is not all that important. Okay? He doesn't really have the time to go to Croatan to look for this colony. So he boards the ship and heads back to England, and the colony is lost. There are some theories as to what happened. They are absorbed by the Croatan and lived amongst them. They are killed by the Croatan. They move north toward Virginia and are absorbed by other Algonquian. They attempt to go out to sea and never made it back to England. Or, this is like conspiracy theory, which I'm not real big on, is that John White finds them all dead and doesn't want to bring that news back because the blame may be on him, but it also might limit future colonization. Because John White had, did I say John Smith? Good. John White has, John Smith's not involved here. John White has a stake in this game. I'm not on that. Like, I wouldn't go that far. Like, I'm more in the camp of the first and second. I think that they probably got absorbed by the Croatan and Algonquian, and some of them lived and some of them perished, right? But I'm sure their numbers depleted over time. So, any questions there? All right. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Go for it. So this became known as the Lost Colony. A little bit about England during this era of the period that we would call the Tudor. There's a huge population boom. We've got a graph showing that through the reign of Henry VII, Henry VIII, and Elizabeth. So with the population boom, obviously the land's limited, right? So that's going to lead to people. Who brought that up out here? Did you bring that up about people wanting to just be able to go buy land? Yeah. Yeah. So that population growth leads to that. Good job. We also see a period of time where the woolen districts have a decline. People lose their jobs in the woolen districts in counties in England. So that's going to lead to a lot of people either leaving, taking everything they have to leave, or what's that process people from England would have done where they would have basically sold themselves? Indentured servitude, very good. So we also see a wave of indentured servitude that we're going to talk about as well. There's another thing that's a factor, and that's debtor prisons. They're overflowing. So a lot of people will take the opportunity to go to the New World. One particular colony that we're going to learn about is Georgia. It's a debtor's colony. So you could get sentenced to Georgia, or you could choose to go to the New World and be a part of the, colonial experiment as opposed to being jammed into overcrowded jails. Primogeniture, this is an important one. How many firstborns do I have in here? Firstborn, all right. So if you're a firstborn, primogeniture would have been right up your alley. That is if you're a male, okay? Sorry ladies, primogeniture would have only worked in your favor if you only had sisters. If you had a brother, you would have lost out on the primogeniture. Primogeniture basically says that the inheritance would go to the eldest son, right? Wouldn't be split up among the kids. That's why there's a lot of very risky, underhanded business that occur in wealthy families where siblings turn up dead during this era as a result of primogeniture. But something to think about in terms of primogeniture is that goes back to the real estate issue. If I'm wealthy, if I'm from a wealthy family and I'm connected, but I know I'm not going to get the inheritance, maybe I'll just make my own way. I've got an education, I've got some money in my pocket. Maybe I'll just try to carve out an opportunity to become a merchant or like a higher level, like maybe even try to get involved in politics or law or whatever in colonial America. So that was common. Keep in mind, joint stock companies are common, but not commonly successful. A lot of them fall apart. It was a very risky business. Here we have a chart of population growth during the Tudor era. On the bottom right, a map of the woolen districts. And then this is not a photo from this era. Photography is not going to come out until the American Civil War, but I just thought I would show you a little picture of the Smithfield Wool Works. So the woolen districts were a big business in England. This is also a golden age of piracy, and this is pretty much where I'm going to kind of wrap things up today. We'll start off next class with Jamestown. We have the golden age of piracy kind of broken up into three periods. The buccaneering period is kind of what we're looking at right now. We're looking at the era from basically like the Vikings all the way through into the middle of the colonial period. So do I have any football fans out there? Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay was a nest of pirates. They still have a pirate festival down there called Gasparilla. It's supposed to be a pretty wild party. Never been to it. On the bucket list. I wouldn't mind checking out Gasparilla. So some of the famous buccaneering period pirates that you're probably familiar with would be Blackbeard, Edward Teach, Captain Kidd. These folks work for themselves. And then we move into sort of like who these people, like who were the majority of these people? French, English, Spanish. They ransacked the Caribbean, Tortugas, Florida, Jamaica. Edward Teach set up his base of operations off of the Outer Banks and Ocracoke. Then we move into the pirate round period. This is the mid to late colonial period. These are longer distance voyages. We also see some other like Mediterranean pirates come into the mix here. All throughout this, Asian pirates are in the pirate era. And then toward the end of the colonial period, the post-Spanish succession period, a lot of this has to do with naval wars, grabs for land in the Caribbean. We're also going to start seeing some, movement toward wars at land and sea. Like the first sort of world war is going to be the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War, that is fought between the French and the British from 1754 to 1763, toward the end of that period as well. So a lot of sailors and privateers are going to fly multiple flags. They'll they will work for a particular country or they'll work independently. Blackbeard had a very democratic system. He would ransack ships, and most of the pirates would join up with him because they knew that there was an opportunity for wealth and career advancement aboard his ships. That was a big reason why he was a threat to all the major empires, because he flew under his own flag. He was born in England, but he didn't fight under the Union Jack of the British. So we've got most of their activity occurring in the Caribbean and off the coast of Florida, the Outer Banks, and in Virginia, and parts of South America as well. We'll talk more about our Mediterranean pirates when we get into the new nation, because we're going to have some problems with the Barbary pirates early in our new nation history. And obviously colonial powers were having to deal with this throughout. I mean, the reward on Blackbeard was huge. He was finally captured, and this is his flag that he flew. When he attacked ships, he would have these burning embers in his beard, and it was to try to intimidate. But even though he pillaged and plundered and he and his crew killed a lot of people, most of the time, those that he took over, a lot of them joined him. Yeah, sure. Any other questions? All right, yeah.
You have multiple ships that.
Yeah. So, well, he had one ship in particular, but he had a group of people working for him. So, and they had his main operation was out of present day, like right across from Hatteras is Ocracoke, and there's a museum still there in his honor. It's like as big as this room. It's very tiny. Yeah, I mean, he had people working off the coast of Florida for him, and a lot of these guys, they would have, it's like those pirates had their own privateers working for them, but he had one single ship that he worked out of. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about him, Captain Kidd, and some of the others. I just want to make sure I get to one more thing before the end of the day. So, all right, cool.